There's the pole sitter Jarno Trulli pouring into pits. Just listen to the crowd.
They're stunned, we're stunned. So it looks like we're going to have a 6-car start.
It's the strangest race ever, and it gets underway now.
I think this is really unfortunate for Formula One racing in America. I don't think it's going to recover from this anytime soon.
We're all leaving. Tell Bernie Eccleston we're out of here.
Tell him, JP.
Let me say something. It's over. Bye.
Thanks to the FIA for ruining a perfectly good race.
Where do we get our money back to watch 6 cars go around the track?
I saved an entire 2-month salary to visit Indianapolis, and I'd really like to appreciate all the Michelin teams because I wasted all my money to come here. Thank you.
Angry words. That refund could happen. Some deserve it more than others. Ferrari cash in. Michael Schumacher's now a championship contender. But in the USA, Formula One gets the thumbs down. The rehabilitation starts here in Manicourt in central France. We're guaranteed a full grid for tomorrow's Grand Prix. Welcome to Manicourt. This is a home Grand Prix for the Michelin Tyre Company. They have accepted the blame for the Indianapolis fiasco and offered to repay every fan who attended the superspeedway. That means around about £10 million worth of tickets. Throughout the race day chaos, all of us here on ITV-F1 were angry and upset, just like you. The immediate headlines reflected a shameful episode in F1 history. But we race on, determined to recover and learn from the stateside shambles. Here are the key characters. Tony George, promoter at Indianapolis since the first US Grand Prix there back in 2000. Bernie Eccleston from Formula One Management, controlling worldwide media and commercial rights. The FIA, the governing body. Max Mosley, the president, actually resigned here last year and changed his mind. He was at home in Monte Carlo throughout the US Grand Prix weekend. On track, Charlie Whiting is the race director. Ted Kravitz reporting.
Formula One arrived in Indianapolis halfway through a season of great racing. It would leave with its very reputation in ridicule. During Friday practice, Michelin tyres started to fail. The most public were the Toyotas, but behind the scenes, other Michelin teams were also suffering failures. The tyres were sent off for tests, but come Saturday, Michelin suspected all their cars would be in deep trouble. They told engineers to increase the pressures. This would only delay the inevitable. On the bank turn 13, the left rear tyre would eventually blow itself apart due to unexpectedly high loadings. F1's other supplier, Bridgestone, had no such problems. Toyota gave Michelin their 9th pole of the season. It's race day at Indianapolis. After overnight tests, Michelin confirm all their left rear tyres will fail. They are not safe. The only way they can race is if the speed is reduced by building a chicane in the middle of turn 13. Without a chicane, 7 teams say they have no choice but to pull out. Meetings are held to try and find a solution. Circuit's owner Tony George needs to put on a show for his customers. Bernie Eccleston wants the chicane to be built. He goes next door to Ferrari to ask if they will race through the chicane. Ferrari says the FIA's decision. The FIA are refusing to build it. The drivers are called into an increasingly desperate situation. It's deadlock. Renault boss Flavio Briatore tries to contact FIA president Max Mosley. It's now half an hour before the start of the US Grand Prix. The Bridgestone cars go to the grid. All the Michelin teams offer to give up claims to any points if only the circuit is slowed down at turn 13. The FIA refuse. Bernie Eccleston tells the Michelin teams to go to the grid, and the American crowd think they're about to see a race, but no compromise is found. Time has run out.
Okay, mate, you know our plan is for the start. Straight in the pits, please, mate.
This is nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Ten days later, Michelin offer to refund fans the cost of their tickets.
It's the Wednesday before the French Grand Prix, and here we are back at the FIA HQ in Paris.
But such is the volatile nature of Formula One at the moment that these 17 bosses arrived here this morning with little or no idea as to what would be the outcome of this meeting. During the session, the FIA brought 5 charges against the teams. Any punishment has been put off until September the 14th, after the Belgian Grand Prix, a race with the high tyre loading of Eau Rouge. But they were found guilty of not having suitable equipment and not taking the option, as they could have done, of driving through the pit lane every lap of the race.
If we impose a heavy penalty today on the assumption that everything's as it looks and nothing's going to be put right, that would be unfair if the fans get paid back, everybody gets compensated, free tickets next year, and the teams make arrangements to see that this never ever happens again.
Given that you had the power to change it then, to make things different, to make a race, why didn't you do that?
These decisions are taken by the race direction, the stewards on the spot. And in fact, the decision was all taken before I even knew anything about it, because this was in the night, European time, and of course I didn't learn anything till early Sunday morning. Having learned about it, I completely supported it, but strictly speaking, I had no power to overrule. I was being asked to overrule my officials. It's rather like somebody calling up Sepp Blatter and saying, we don't like the referee, will you overrule him? So technically I couldn't, but I wouldn't even if I could. I think they were absolutely right. Unfortunate decision, but inescapable, because you couldn't put a chicane in under any circumstances. It would have been dangerous legally, dangerous physically, and completely wrong from a sporting point of view, because you'd be changing the circuit to favour one group of competitors over another, and a group of competitors that had brought the wrong equipment. Indefensible.
Here in Magny-Cours, the teams are very angry at being found guilty of anything at all. The Michelin team bosses gathered the media to put their case. PR games are still being played. Formula One is a sport with politics. At Indianapolis, the politics prevailed over the sport.
And we wonder if we will ever go back to Indianapolis. Tony, how could this fiasco have been prevented?
Well, by accepting collective responsibility of everybody in Formula One. That means the FIA, Ferrari, all the teams and the teams who are trying to make it happen. By putting the fans first, by putting politics second. This was about politics, it was about laying down the law, the strict laws, and of course, legally, in the land of the lawsuit, in the land of the big show, the show should have gone on, and there were options.
Did it surprise you that the little man there, Bernie Ecclestone, didn't whip them all into shape and say, come on guys, you race?
I think that was the most surprising thing, that he has lost some of his power, and the most powerful man in the sport is Max Mosley. And I believe Max could have overruled, but I don't think he wanted to overrule the stewards on the ground. He was making a point. He had sent a letter out about tyres before Canada. They must be robust. And, you know, he was carrying out the letters of the law.
And why do you feel they've delayed that punishment until the middle of September after the Belgian Grand Prix?
Well, as I said, I don't think anybody here, I haven't found anybody here who agrees with the FIA. They all agree with the Michelin teams, etc. And I think it gives the teams time, Michelin time, to compensate. And they are doing that. They've said, look, they've made a misjudgment, they've made a mistake. And I think by September it will be quietly dropped, because everyone is very keen to compensate the motor speedway and to compensate the fans above all else.
A brief word from you about the position of the president, Max Mosley. A bit isolated at the moment, perhaps.
I think he is isolated at the moment. Certainly the weight of opinion is against him, and I think he's waiting to see that the compensation goes through, and perhaps then he will retreat from his current stance.
Right, let us have a word. One of those team bosses, we saw him featuring prominently in all those pictures. It is Ron Dennis, the McLaren boss. Here he is talking to Ted.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, well, Ron, no one got banned by the FIA. No one is excluded. Penalties very light. So why are you appealing?
Well, first of all, there are currently no penalties. That's the sort of Damocles that we feel sits over the 7 teams. 6 of the teams have appealed, and the reason that they've appealed is simple, is because we feel in putting the safety of our drivers in front of our commercial interests, and of course the safety of the public, we felt that we did the right thing. And you know, these decisions that were taken against a very difficult backdrop, with people knowing exactly what the consequences were going to be. Michelin had clearly admitted that the problem was theirs, and all the teams in Indianapolis, and certainly after Indianapolis, felt completely vindicated in respect of the decision. But of course, sympathetic to the fact that we had deprived the public from a motor race, and we took that extremely seriously, as did Michelin, and of course their actions to compensate the public clearly demonstrate that.
In a word, Ron, do you expect your appeal to be successful?
I think that going into the appeal process, we have some expectation that justice may emerge, but simple fact is the option of not appealing would have been guilt by admission, and we're guilty of nothing. We're just guilty of putting the driver's safety first.
Thanks very much, Ron.
Safety was their paramount concern, Tony. Do you feel that this episode will accelerate a breakaway group, that they will all group together against the governing body?
Well, it hasn't done anything at the moment to prevent a schism happening, but hopefully they will see the sense at the end of that. Just two little points I want to make, Jim, is that at the end of all the negotiations, all the Michelin runners did offer to go and race for no points whatsoever, so one side wasn't disadvantaged. And the second thing is, in Indiana law, given that they'd had a note from Michelin saying the tyres were already dangerous, they weren't allowed to race anyway. So the teams were between a rock and a hard place.
Absolutely. My own feeling would have been much better if they'd knocked the race on the head completely. But the main aspect of the public practice session that masqueraded as the United States Grand Prix is that out of nowhere, Michael Schumacher has emerged as the genuine championship contender, because the top two obviously becalmed, Raikkonen and Alonso. Schumacher, 7 times a winner in France, just 3 points behind the Finn. Barrichello on the last 3 podiums. He is a couple clear of Trulli. Then the Williams pair, Heidfeld and Webber. Ralf Schumacher returning here after his Indianapolis accident. Fisichella level with the best of British, that is David Coulthard. And Ferrari, the big movers in the constructors, 42 points in the last 3 races, promoting the champions into joint second place with McLaren Mercedes, 13 points behind Renault. This a home race for Renault. Well, BMW Williams, they're 4th, but their relationship appears to be coming to a close.
After 6 years of partnership with Williams, BMW has decided to branch out on its own and purchase the Sauber team.
The deal with Sauber will come into place at 1st of January 2006. We will be a majority owner. Peter Sauber himself will keep a minority stake in the team.
The Williams-BMW marriage has been through some rocky periods, and the company has now decided that success lies in controlling its own destiny.
We found that the importance and the impact of the engine as a success factor in Formula One has diminished as opposed to the past years. You need a chassis, tire, the driver have become more important. So the engine itself doesn't really make the success in Formula One. In January, we started talks with Sauber, and initially with Red Bull as well. It focused soon on Sauber, and during the discussions we felt that the two companies would fit each other quite well. The way of thinking, way of working, quite similar, culture of the company similar, so we discovered that it could become more than an engine supply deal.
For sure it was a difficult decision, but I think it's important that the team has the possibility, the resources to grow up, because the infrastructure is excellent, the people are also excellent, but the budget is not big enough. Now with BMW it's possible for the people to show what they can.
Although it hasn't come as a total surprise, the announcement does leave Frank Williams in something of a quandary when it comes to an engine supply for 2006.
The contract as it is will stop at the end of this year, and this contract was about more than just engine supply. It's been a partnership in which BMW provided more than the engine. We had joint operations in various areas, and this will stop.
So their focus will now be elsewhere, but BMW hasn't ruled out continuing to provide the engines that power the Williams cars.
It's good that BMW at least have committed strongly towards their vision to Formula One, and okay, if it's not maybe with the team that I'm driving with, who knows? We don't know what the future will hold, but they are passionate about Formula One, and if they want to go and purchase a well-respected little outfit like Sauber, then go for it. I think most people knew that there were discussions going on. There were a lot of rumors for the last couple of weeks or even months. I was surprised that it happened so suddenly then, but I think it's not a bad step for both of them.
We have now a period of 6 months in order to get everything sorted out, to prepare for next year, and we will announce the new team with people, structure, the name of the team, the drivers, early next year.
Well, I'm here now with Williams Director of Engineering, Patrick Head. Patrick, obviously this announcement that BMW are buying the Sauber team has raised a few issues for you guys, especially where your engine supply is concerned. How much of a headache has it given you?
Well, obviously, as BMW have said, they're prepared to supply us with engines next year, but we're obviously looking at the different options available to us, and when we know what we're doing, we'll make it clear to people outside as well.
What kind of timescale are we looking at? When do you think you're going to be in a position to confirm your plans for 2006 and onwards?
It'll be a few weeks from now. I wouldn't like to put a precise timescale on it.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay, thanks.
Well, bluff Patrick Head there, as always. Are they in a bit of a pickle?
Yes, they are. Any team that loses a major engine supplier who's also in a part of a partnership is in a little bit of trouble. Sponsors could go away, drivers could go away, but I'm hoping they're going to get compensation because they're contracted up to 2009. And also there's a big rumor about Hyundai coming in, and a certain David Rich is involved in that equation as well. Okay. So there might be some light at the end of the tunnel for Williams.
Was it the Anglo-German mix there that just didn't work at the end of it all?
Yeah, I believe so, Jim. I think that, BMW wanted far more influence than just an engine supplier, and they were determined, particularly Tyson was determined to get his own team, and now he's got it, but they may have bitten off more than they can chew.
And what are the implications for Jenson Button?
Well, he's rumoured to have a clause in the contract that he has to have a works engine. That might affect it because they might not have one, in which case that might affect his contract and he might want to stay at BAR, but can he?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, Jenson is not the top British driver at the moment. That is David Coulthard, who had plenty to say for himself at Indianapolis and spoke a lot of good sense as well. Here's DC now with Louise.
Yeah, that's right, Jim. He had some strong and informed opinions during our live coverage of the US Grand Prix. 2 weeks on now, David. Time to reflect. Are you looking back on it? What do you think now?
Well, obviously it's history now. Unfortunately, not a nice piece of our Formula One history, but I think everyone was expecting a definitive answer on what penalties, if any, were going to be imposed. We all now have to wait a little bit longer to see what's going to happen. And yeah, racing goes on as normal from this race.
Well, the immediate downside for you obviously is that you are now starting this qualifying second session in second place. You're second man out on the track. How much time is that going to cost you?
Well, impossible to know unless you were doing a proper back-to-back, but it's safe to assume that it does cost you time. Track evolution is such that you'll normally see it get quicker towards the end, but well aware of the views in the commentary box that you don't want to try and give yourself a psychological disadvantage early on. So this is what I have. I'm just going to go and drive my lap, and at the end of the day, in this type of format of qualifying, that's all it is. It's about a battle against yourself to see how well you drive your lap. It's not a true comparison of man and machine out on a track, adjusting his car to the conditions and seeing who can deliver on the day.
Thanks, David. Go for it.
Thank you.
He has never been a great fan of the single lap qualifying system. David Coulthard goes out second after Ralf Schumacher. Well, this is our 15th Grand Prix weekend here at Manicourt. We're slap bang in the middle of rural France. It's a super smooth track as well. Just over 2.5 miles a lap. Average speed over 130 miles an hour. We'll be driving around with Fernando Alonso very shortly. First, though, here's Martin Brundle.
Our world tour continues. We leave the massive turkey legs of Northern America to the smaller frog's legs of the middle of France. Manicourt, Nevers, 2 3/4 miles, 16 turns in total. We hightailed it out of North America with a posse chasing us to here, the relative serenity of the middle of France. It's going to be a tough weekend for tyres again, but because of performance rather than durability. Michelin also have their hands full supplying the Works Renault team for their home Grand Prix. It's tough on tyres because the corners very much lead one into another, and the few straights that there are seriously affected by the corner exit speed just before. Let's take a look. with Alonso on board the Renault. Through the final chicane into the pit straight. He stays right, almost off the track, really. The first corner is full throttle, 150 miles an hour. Not a hint of a lift, straight into the heart of turn 2, Estoril. 125 minimum speed. You'll touch the apex twice, over 160 before the exit. A little easy right called Golf, up to 190 miles an hour, bring it to the left-hand side for the heavy braking zone into Adelaide, about 100 metres before the corner, down to just 50. The nose turns in beautifully. Virtually no traction control needed. The Renault working very well so early in the weekend. Now watch this, the Nürburgring chicane, 170 miles an hour, bouncing across the curbs, slight correction on the exit, straight into the 180 corner. Hug the inside like it's your favourite granny. Sweeping right, full throttle, short straight ahead. Ignore this little left. You're building up to over 160 miles an hour for the unsighted Imola chicane. Look at the commitment on the way through. Cheating across the curbs, immediately to the left for the Chateau d'Eau corner. Gets it out of shape. The back tries to overtake the front. He corrects it with an armful of opposite lock, cascading downhill towards the school corner, turn 15. An easy braking zone, a corner that's tightened slightly through the exit, but it's not a problem. Now look at these curves in the final chicane. He has to just point the car over, collect it up as it lands into a new lap.
Alonso was on pole last year, finished runner-up to Monsieur Manicure, Michael Schumacher. We had a massive response from you in the aftermath of the last Grand Prix. You can email the show at paddock@itv-f1.com. The website has all sorts of distinctive new features. That's itv.com/F1. Tony's there to talk to you after the Grand Prix. But now let's go back to Ted. He has with him the man in the eye of the Indianapolis storm.
Yes, indeed, Jim. And this question we have from the emails is from Matt Hook in Wiltshire. And he asks, how did Michelin manage to underestimate the loads that went through the tyres at Indianapolis, given that they've been there before? Well, Pierre, what's the answer to that?
I like you when you say, how do we manage? We did not manage anyway. Now, the problem was when you have an incident or an accident somewhere, it's never one cause only. It's always an accumulation of different factors. Those factors are the track itself, the surface, the load conditions, the car conditions, the tire pressure, and let's say 20 different factors that may happen. What we did not estimate as the real value is the fact that on this rear left tire, at the same time, you have a very important longitudinal force with the torque of the engine being at the top almost. Then you add an overload due to the traction and due to the fact that we are on curve. And then you add the overload, very sudden, that you get up on the banking. And in addition, you get the very specific overload from a bouncing aerodynamic car when you get down with the car because of the aerodynamic. You're too low, bang, and the car bounces up and down and up and down, and instantly you can have outrageous load on the tire. We did not evaluate this properly. It's not. Now we know because we have the telemetry from the cars or from Friday and Saturday. So we know this year's cars, but before we did not. If you are lucky, you develop your tires. Those bloody tires are unbreakable. That's the problem.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. Well, let's join Louise now with the details of the competition.
In Indianapolis, we offered you the chance to win a day out as a guest of BAR at a Silverstone test with exclusive access to the BAR garage. Paul Medway from the Forest of Dean was the lucky winner. He knew that Michael Schumacher came home first in last year's US Grand Prix. This week, 3 people can each win a voucher worth £1,000 to spend at an Eden Park store. Their clothing's really popular with a lot of top sports stars and with our very own Jim Rosenthal. This is his shirt being modelled here by the lovely Lydia. Eden Park are also the official clothing supplier for the British and Irish Lions. To enter the competition, just answer the following question. Which circuit currently hosts the French Grand Prix? Is it A, Paul Ricard, B, Manicourt, or C, Rheims? To enter by phone, call 0901 293 2020 or text F1 followed by your answer, A, B or C, to 63337. Calls and texts cost £1 plus a standard network rate. And hurry up, we need your answer by this Wednesday.
Shirt looks a lot better on Lydia than me. The old French Air Force just going above us. Qualifying coming right up. The most significant happening over the last couple of days in practice, Kimi Räikkönen in the McLaren Mercedes. The Mercedes engine blowing in the second session on Friday. That means Kimi will be minus 10 places on the grid. Ralf Schumacher will be ready to go, though, when you rejoin us at Manicourt. ITV Sport welcomes you back to rural Manicourt. It's qualifying for tomorrow afternoon's French Grand Prix. Here is the running order for you. Ralf Schumacher will be first to go. He's won round here and claimed his first ever F1 pole. That was in the 2001 Williams. And David Coulthard, we've spoken to him. Heidfeld in the Williams next. Villeneuve in the Sauber going 5th. Webber going 8th. He's a really good one-lap specialist. And Alonso, championship leader, will go 10th. Fisichella in Renault going really well in practice. Then Jenson Button going 12th. The Minardis are very high up there because that's the finishing order of the last Grand Prix in the States when Minardis had a double point scoring session. The Jordans, and last on track, Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher. A 1-2 for those Ferraris here last year. So it is Ralf Schumacher in the Toyota, our opening runner, watched by Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you very much indeed, Jim. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the centre of France. Only 6 cars took part in the race at Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully we're going to see all 20 Formula One cars here this afternoon and again tomorrow in the Grand Prix. This is the Manicourt circuit then. Billiard table smooth, as we've heard. 2.75 miles long. Pole position today, we're expecting somewhere in the region of the mid 1 minute 14, something along those lines. Interesting track, 3 high-speed sections here, and at 3 sections, 3 corners of 50 miles an hour. So it's really something of a schizophrenic track. Ralf Schumacher on, here we are on board with him. Pole sitter here before, a winner here as well with the BMW Williams team. And the drivers are really divided about this track. Some of them love it and feel it provides them with a tremendous challenge. Others find it a little bit dull and uninteresting. But it generally turns out a decent Grand Prix. This last sequence of corners had just added a couple of years ago. Very tricky for the drivers getting the cars up and over the chicanes. And Ralf Schumacher, who was second fastest this morning on a 1:14.6, celebrated his 30th birthday a couple of years ago, is out and running and into the long, right-handed Estoril corner that leads out onto the back straight.
Slow out lap is what you need here. You get so much mechanical grip from fresh tyres, you don't want to give any of it away as you're going to start your hot lap. He's locked the front brake into the Adelaide hairpin, will cost himself quite heavily there. It's after the sector point, first sector point, so it won't show up for a while, and that will cost him very dearly. That's one of the penalties you pay for going so slowly on the outlap. Your brakes are not fully up to operating temperature. This is the 180-degree corner. Full throttle through the right and left now. It's absolutely nothing to do really for a Grand Prix driver through here. The cars are so good. But this one catches your attention. The Imola chicane. Tremendous speed as you drop down the hill, and you have to have good direction change to get into the tricky little Chateau d'Eau, the water tower corner. Down the newer area, then sweeping into what they call the school corner, Lycée corner, at the bottom of the hill, and another one where it's easy to run a little wide, and you want to straighten the car up as early as you can to launch it across those curbs, just trying to balance the weight and the weight distribution as you land, and hopefully keep it pointing in the right direction. A late 1:15 for Ralf, not a great time. He is first to run. There have been Porsche Super Cup cars out there, nothing against Porsche or the Super Cup, but they run a much harder tyre, and it tends to lift some of the Formula One rubber, put down the harder rubber, and you saw many replays there of Ralf locking the front tyre of the Toyota, and his 2 old bosses, Frank Williams and Patrick Head, looking on. Coulthard then, running second. You could argue he was the last one to pull out of the Grand Prix in Indianapolis. So maybe he was the last one to retire there of the Michelin runners, but unfortunately for him, he's been allocated slot 2 this afternoon, an early runner, and he'll take some pain for that too, as did Ralf.
Out onto the back straight then, 6th gear, approaching 200 miles an hour. They break from 200 miles an hour down to 50 here in just 3 seconds. It's awesome to watch when you stand out on that corner, the brake disc glowing, the enormous amount of braking force on the drivers, their heads pushed down into the cockpit, such is the force. Here we go then, Nürburgring chicane, tremendous place to spectate, particularly from the back. You watch the cars darting into there, they launch the things up over the curbs. the slow 180 corner, but my favourite corner on this racetrack to go and stand next to, and particularly from the back on the left-hand side, is this one here, the Imola. The way these cars change direction through here is absolutely spectacular. The TV camera doesn't really capture it. You have to be down there on the ground to see it. But Martin, when I went down there yesterday afternoon, the standout cars without doubt were the McLarens, the Renaults, and funnily enough, the BAR of Jenson Button.
Yeah, the VARs look good. I was down at turn 1 this morning and saw a similar thing, but actually, amazingly, 20 different ways from 20 drivers to go through that corner. Coulthard goes over the line with a 1:16. I think he'll be quite disappointed with that. He's running race fuel, but he pulled something back on Ralf Schumacher in that middle sector after Schumacher's outbraking of himself down at the hairpin. But Coulthard then a long way behind the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher. And he would be disappointed not to be in the 1:15s for sure.
Yeah, he was 7/10 slower than he went this morning. Gunter Steiner, technical director of Red Bull Racing, didn't like it very much. Ralf Schumacher 1.1 seconds slower than he went this morning. Well, we've obviously seen over the course of one lap qualifying, the track does tend to get a lot faster with the first 5 or 6 cars going out. Magny-Cours, not so much of an issue. The track doesn't change as much here as perhaps some other places, so quite a smaller penalty perhaps for the earlier runners here in comparison to other places. Here's Nick Heidfeld then, first sight of the revised, heavily revised BMW Williams. Obviously the news coming through, the confirmation this week that BMW are to join forces with Sauber from 2006 onwards. They're taking over the team. It will be known as the BMW Formula One team, and that will bring an end to the relationship with Williams Formula One. So a difficult moment this for the Williams team. Heidfeld certainly in the paddock favourite to land one of the BMW seats for next year. This is a track he enjoys, one here in Formula 3 and in Formula 3000, and he's certainly one of in the camp that likes Magny-Cours.
You see, they can use so much of the curbs now. You had to stay before, when this track was first created, so far away from those curbs in the high-speed chicanes. Otherwise you were just launched into the sky. The problem is it takes away some of the accuracy. You can just throw the car in and you know you've got a bit of space to breathe if it slides unexpectedly or tries to get away from you. I don't like it. There should be a higher penalty for being, or bigger advantage for being more accurate. Heidfeld goes second, a fraction ahead of Coulthard, and you have to say that Williams that we've been eagerly looking forward to has not really shone this weekend. Ted has further news for us.
Yeah, down at Red Bull, and Christian Klein lost an hour of very valuable dry weather setup time yesterday because of crash. But he says that the car is easier to drive here than some of the previous circuits because of the smooth track, as we referred to it earlier. But both Red Bulls, and this would be stood up by DC's lap, both Red Bulls not at all happy over the curbs of the last chicane. They're losing a load of time through there.
Well, 3 runners so far, all of them, judging by the reaction of their people back in the pits, putting in disappointing laps. Here's Christian Klein, managing to keep his foot on the throttle through the long right-hander. 1 or 2 you'll be hearing later on, having to feather the throttle. We hear Massa's particularly interesting through there. He kind of guns the throttle in a real staccato fashion. Hopefully we'll hear that. But Christian Klein has been a few tenths behind David Coulthard throughout the weekend. Coulthard did a 1:16.4. At the moment, Klein is on target to, well, he's a tenth slower than Coulthard in the first sector, so he's quite close to his teammate.
He's taking a wider line into the 180 corner, and they're really struggling for basic fundamental grip. You can see them running much wider than they were at the end of free practice. We did have a damp track this morning, which tends to take away quite a lot of the grip overnight. They have to start reapplying the rubber down onto the track, clearing away the rubbish overnight. And of course they lost a lot of track running too in that with those track conditions. Dan, just 2 corners to go then for Klein. You tend to finish the corner very late here and then just start pointing and getting the weight onto your left rear before you hit the curbs, and he goes just behind Coulthard. It's 3rd and 4th then for the 2 Red Bulls, and again I think they'll be disappointed with that. I think they had a chance here to be somewhere between 8th and 12th for those 2 cars. That's looking more like 12th to 14th to me.
Yep, so everyone disappointed so far of the first 4 to go out. Ralf Schumacher fastest, Heidfeld second, Coulthard third, and Klein fourth. You can see the amount of energy as the cars leap up over the barriers there. Really does shock the car, doesn't it? Shocks the driver and his arms. Now here's Jacques Villeneuve. He has had the upper hand over Felipe Massa throughout this weekend. He's driven very smoothly, very aggressively. Massa not able to get on Villeneuve's pace. So great news for Jacques Villeneuve, who described the announcement of BMW buying Sauber as great news for me. I wonder in the fullness of time whether that will prove to be true, or whether in fact BMW will dispense with his services before they even get started. Time will tell, but at the moment he's having a good weekend. Can he follow through in the qualifying session? Sauber once again slowest of the Michelin runners in the free practice session. The car just lacking aerodynamic downforce, really. They've got a fantastic state-of-the-art wind tunnel, which is definitely one of the reasons why they were attractive to BMW. That and the fact they don't carry any debt, I would imagine. But they're not really able to spend enough time in that wind tunnel, and certainly with BMW's resources, they will spend a lot more time. Look at this, though. Villeneuve really in his element here. 2/10 faster than Ralf Schumacher after 2 sectors.
Yeah, Schumacher had a problem, of course, didn't he, with that down at the Adelaide hairpin. So that is why Villeneuve's so much quicker in the middle sector. He can hang it together, though. He might just be having his best qualifying of the year. Villeneuve just through this rather bumpy chicane again. Another man giving the highest part of the curbs a wide berth, and fastest he does go. That's a good effort from Jacques Villeneuve.
Certainly is. Villeneuve fastest then. Ralf Schumacher second, Heidfeld third, Coulthard fourth, and Klein fifth. Next man out, one of the big favourites here this weekend, Juan Montoya, in just a moment. Qualifying for tomorrow's French Grand Prix here at Magny-Cours, the 10th round of this 19-round 2005 World Championship, literally the midpoint in the championship. There's Ron Dennis, boss of the McLaren Mercedes team. Juan Montoya is out on track, and with Kimi Räikkönen having to take an engine penalty, 10th place drop on the grid because of changing an engine last night, that leaves the way clear for Montoya to have a strong weekend. And I have to say that with aerodynamic updates and a new specification engine, a big step on the engine from Mercedes, this is the standout car of Formula One at the moment. Watch it out on the track, watch it on the telly. It is brilliant, it's glued to the ground. And we'll enjoy this lap with Juan Montoya as he chases his first pole of the season and his first Grand Prix victory of the season as well with the McLaren Mercedes team. Here he is, up to 200 miles an hour then, coming down into the Adelaide hairpin. We saw him locking his brakes a couple of times on the outlap, which was interesting considering he wasn't going particularly quickly on the outlap, but I'm not sure what that was all about, but the braking system seemed to work there for him.
It worked fine. There was a little bit of something blue smoke coming out of the back, whether that's the under tray rubbing. Of course, they're in full race trim now, and he's dropped it on the way into 180, not badly, but enough to have to fight it back to the apex of the corner. He had a good margin in his pocket, but that was not a good corner there for Montoya. He's a quarter of a second up, but if he wants pole, it's going to have to be the perfect lap. Chateau d'Eau, this car is supreme, as you said. They can get on the throttle so early and so hard. It's just stuck to the ground.
The speed through that second fast chicane was fantastic. Watch the way it slides through the slow corners as well. The back just comes around exactly what Montoya wants it to do. It does it. It's the most obedient, supple, compliant racing car. And look at that, 0.3 of a second faster than Jacques Villeneuve. It could perhaps have been half a second without that little mistake in the 180. But nevertheless, that's a decent lap from Juan Montoya. 1:15.4. Difficult to get any sort of feel for what pole's going to be then at the moment. There's all of these times quite significantly slower than we saw in free practice this morning. So that would tend to suggest people have put a little bit more fuel in. Perhaps they were thinking about a 3-stop strategy this morning when they were doing the free practice runs. But in fact, they're erring more towards a 2-stop strategy. You can do either here. Listen to the throttle. Massa, that's what I was talking about, that punching effect he does.
Yeah, I don't understand why Massa's doing that. It just breaks the back end loose and introduces traction control early. He's just got into a nasty habit of stamping on the throttle pedal, but he's sticking with that. And Michael won this race, of course, last year with 4 stops, but because he could, really. And he had such a fast car, it almost didn't matter which strategy he used here. But Massa a fraction up at the end of the first sector, and that's the end of it's comparing him with Montoya at that point, rather than necessarily the fastest time there. But in the second part of the lap now, this is such a wonderful corner, but you can head off here, spear off here and have a tremendously big accident. Because you're carrying so much speed, then you go straight onto the gravel and start bouncing all over the place. Just a touch wide in Chateau d'Eau, but no problem, except you have to turn a bit harder, maybe introduce some more traction control. 2 corners to go.
So Massa, who's been slower than Villeneuve throughout the practice sessions, he's on target to be very, very close to him indeed. Villeneuve currently second. Massa nicks it from him by, well, less than a tenth, really, just over a tenth, in fact. And he's just behind Juan Montoya. So the two Saubers, nothing really much to choose between them. That's Massa's family there, I believe. And Ted Kravitz has some news for us.
I'm down at Williams. Mark Webber was saying earlier that he's been trying to get the second sector of this lap right. The car feels balanced. It's not bad, not oversteer, not understeer. But then you just look at the lap times, and it's apparently nowhere. He puts it down to a lack of grip. And interestingly, Martin, a lot of people in this team now starting to talk openly about a lack of power as well from the BMW.
Well, of course, the cat is out of the bag on that front, isn't it, with the news that BMW are moving on next year. And, well, Williams are looking around for a new engine. Honda, Toyota as customers, possibly Cosworth as well. But Cosworth have a small number of people working on the engine program compared to the, say, 200-odd who work for BMW and Honda on their engine programs. So it's a difficult moment, as I said before, for the Williams team, particularly because they've brought this tremendous amount of aerodynamic updates on this car this weekend, and it hasn't translated into lap time, has it, Martin?
No, they must be very disappointed with that. There's certainly been a bit of a crusade to let it be known they are disappointed with the BMW power, but maybe that's a bit of counter-punch for some of the other frictions and press stuff that's been going on there. It's a shame that relationship's broken down in the way that it has. What will Williams do next year? Will they stick with BMW? Will they go to Honda? Where does it leave Jenson Button? Will he move anyway? And where does it leave Nick Heidfeld and Webber? Heidfeld must have 2 or 3 good options anyway, I would have thought. Webber, we understand, is nailed to the team contractually. But that's going to be an intriguing story as the summer unfolds.
And Jenson Button as well. What's going to happen with him? And the obligation to go there? Is he going to try and find a way out of that, try and stay where he is, or go somewhere else? That's certainly, as you say, the summer's going to be the big story there. Webber goes ahead of Heidfeld, who's standing there with Mario Tyson, the boss of BMW Williams. Webber slots in into 5th place, the lap that's 4 tenths quicker than his teammate. So third at the moment, Jacques Villeneuve, and Louise Goodman is with him.
Jacques, good effort and a pretty good result for you as well.
I'm quite happy. It's a lot quicker than we've been all weekend, and qualifying went well, so I'm very happy about that.
Teammates just gone a tenth quicker. That must be a bit annoying, though.
How much quicker?
10.
Oh, that's fine. Considering our strategies as a team, I'm actually quite happy to be within a tenth of him, so that's good.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow. What he means is carrying more fuel. So 4 tenths of a second for every 10 kilograms of fuel, 3 laps worth of fuel you carry around here. It's a high penalty, one of the higher penalties of the year. Sato's been flying in the BAR, and he's fastest man of anybody so far in the first sector. The man who'll be slightly relieved is Ralf Schumacher, but still remaining 4th despite his error, so the rest of his lap must have been pretty good. But Sato should be about to blow that and just about everything else away.
Yeah, puts Montoya's lap into perspective, doesn't it? 4 tenths up already after just 2 sectors. As I was saying before, this BAR working well. The last time we were at a high downforce circuit was the Nürburgring, and you'll recall that the VAR team weren't particularly impressive there. The pace simply wasn't there on their comeback after their 2-race ban. But they've been working hard on it, particularly Anthony Davidson working hard in testing at Jerez to sort the high downforce out. And look at that, 7.5 tenths faster. And Sato becomes the first man to dip into the 1-minute 14s as Mercedes boss Norbert Haug reads his notes. And well, they've done a lot of work on this car. They're disappointed that they're in the position they're in, just with no points on the board halfway through the season. But there's no way it's going to stay like that, because this is a very good car. And the Honda engine in the back of it, there's nothing wrong with that at all. They're starting to find the sweet spot now, the VAR team.
Yeah, the car looks great all around the circuit. Surely that's a 3-stop fuel. We've had 3 fake poles recently, which kind of annoys me. And it's difficult to read this to a certain extent. I think Jensen's pole was fake in Canada in terms of he had much less fuel than the people around him. Heidfeld's definitely in Nürburgring. We know that to be the case, and of course we don't think truly in Indianapolis even had enough fuel to get out of his own way, because they didn't expect to race, and they were proven to be right, of course.
Well, Alonso, World Championship leader, driving a French car here on French soil, stuck it on pole here last year, finished second to Michael Schumacher in the race, but he gave him a really good run for his money in a car that was nowhere near a match for the Ferrari here last season. What can he do? He's got a tremendous opportunity here with Kimi Raikkonen penalised, having to take an engine penalty for an engine change, 10 places back on the grid. If indeed Raikkonen goes out here this afternoon, some suggestion he might not do that, might play a different strategy and start tomorrow's race from the pit lane. We will find out. Raikkonen due out in 4 cars' time, but Alonso at the moment on target for the 3rd pole of the season for him and Renault. Still a lot of big names to come, but this has been a nice lap from Fernando Alonso. 1 or 2 people here supporting the Renault team in the grandstands. Across the line he goes to take 2.5 tenths off Sato's benchmark. That is the fastest lap we've seen so far this afternoon. It puts Alonso quickest ahead of Sato, Montoya 3rd, Massa 4th and Villeneuve 5th. Next man out in a minute will be Alonso's teammate Fisichella, who was fastest in practice this morning. Qualifying for tomorrow's French Grand Prix here at Magny-Cours. Get a pin and a map of France, stick it straight in the middle of the map of France, and you'll probably put it through the commentary box we're standing in now. It's the middle of nowhere, it has a world-class racetrack in it, and Giancarlo Fisichella at the moment is out on track, just warming up, about to try and knock his teammate Fernando Alonso off provisional pole position. Alonso fastest, Sato 2nd, Montoya 3rd, Massa 4th, Villeneuve 5th. And as I said before, Fisichella was the fastest man in practice this morning. A little bit down after the early season that he's had. He's had all the bad luck in this team, really. Only 17 points on the board in what is a winning car. Is this the weekend he starts to turn it around again?
Well, as you say, he's been fast, he knows the place extremely well. It's a very technical racetrack. If you know which way to drive it and where the important points are, and in a couple of corners you take unusual lines through them. At the moment he is a fraction up, but that's not enough to relax with. Down into 180, there's always more grip right on the inside, and he was a long while getting there. But he straightens the car up nicely. He's using less track than Alonso at the moment, Fisichella. He's neater and tidier, and it's cost him time.
Well, his first sector was faster than Alonso's. His second sector just a tenth slower, so there's very little to choose between them. This ought to put him second at the very least, but if he's had a good final sector, then he might be able to do slightly better than that. Alonso, the fastest man so far in the final sector in the sister Renault car. Once again, the faithful get to their feet. Across the line he goes. He's lost a little time in the final sector and dropped behind Sato. You saw Fisichella just looking down a little bit there at his dashboard. He was looking to see the time. Now, maybe they know something we don't in terms of the relative fuel loads of Fisichella and Alonso. It's one of the unknown factors of qualifying as it is at the moment, single lap qualifying style. They remind you they carry the fuel in this session with which they'll start tomorrow's Grand Prix. Last year we saw Alonso go 14 laps into the race on the fuel he had. I think they'll go a little further than that tomorrow into the 70-lap Grand Prix on the fuel they have at the moment.
I'm looking forward to this lap of Buttons. Fisichella tightened up. You could see him in the cockpit, tightened up as the lap came to a close. Just stopped letting the car flow almost. And that's a sign of a bit of pressure and tension. Sato currently on the front row in the sister BAR of the one that Button's driving. He had to hesitate a long time for getting on the throttle in the middle of the corner, as do most of the drivers. But Jensen with a great chance of a very, very solid grid position here. How's he done in the first sector? Well, he's 2/10 slower than his teammate. We don't know the corresponding fuel loads, but that is not a great first sector, whichever way you look at it.
Well, he likes this track. He likes the flow of it, he said. It's smooth and flowing, a bit like my driving. And certainly Jensen Button, with pole recently in Montreal, is back on form, looking to go into Silverstone next weekend, his home Grand Prix, with at least a podium, but losing time in the middle sector here as well. Now, Fisichella said yesterday that the last part of the lap in many ways is the most important here at Magny-Cours. Certainly proved to be costly for him. They spent 24 seconds in it. It's got 3 second gear corners in it, only 1 quick corner. So very important. This is the final part. What's Button done?
Yeah, the inevitable fourth, I'm afraid. He was he was about a tenth shy of his teammate in all of the sectors. That's popped him just behind Fisichella, so second and fourth for the 2 BARs, suggesting he's not on that different a fuel load. But the car just not able to quite carry the apex speeds and direction change speeds of Sato, no doubt about it. Jensen didn't quite have that razor edge of his teammate's car.
Well, we were asking whether Raikkonen would indeed do a lap. The answer is yes, he will. They've decided that 11th or 12th on the grid is good, and he's obviously carrying the right sort of fuel load for attacking the race that way. He can't afford to allow Alonso to get away from him. Alonso currently on provisional pole. Remember, he's 22 points behind him in the World Championship. This is the halfway stage. If Kimi can have a second half of the season identical to the one that Alonso had a first half, and vice versa, then there'll be nothing to choose between them. It's not unimaginable with a car like he has that Raikkonen could have a second half of the season like Alonso's first half. Certainly 4 wins in the next half season, entirely possible for this car and driver package.
So he had 2 wheels completely the other side of the curb there, which he's kind of entitled to do because that's the way the racetrack is and he can get away with it. But it's just straightening all the corners out. There we go again. 2 wheels right on the green area, and that's not the racetrack.
Remember, Kimi has had an engine change. Whatever happens here, he'll go 10 places back on the grid from whatever position he gets. He would like that position to be fastest just for his own pride, I think, as much as anything else, and because it would make him 11th on the grid instead of 12th. Here he comes across the line, goes second fastest behind Raikkonen, behind Alonso. So at the moment, that's a net 12th for him, but we've still got some other runners to come out. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
A lot of key people at Toyota saying they'd be very annoyed after this session if one of their cars, and that means this one, Jarno Trulli, isn't on the front row after this qualifying. So big things expected down here, but still Toyota, they're another one who can't get it right over the last chicane.
Well, Ralph, we saw make a mistake and outbraked himself at the hairpin, and also was first runner, which is a big disadvantage this afternoon. But truly, and that car did look truly sensational down in turn 1 and 2 just before this session when they were last out in free practice. The Toyota is working well, and he has, I can understand them being disappointed if they're not right in the thick of the action. But he's a tenth shy, or a fraction shy down at the hairpin.
3/100ths of a second slower than Fernando Alonso in the 24-second first sector. Ralf Schumacher in the sister car was second fastest this morning to Giancarlo Fisichella in pre-practice. A 14.6 was Ralf Schumacher's time. That wouldn't be good enough at the moment to anything better than third. So Trulli needs to find a little bit more speed if he's to stick this car on pole position for the second Grand Prix in succession. 9/100ths of a second now. He's lost 6/100ths. It's nothing. It's a metre or so over the course of the lap so far. And in the final sector then, which has such bad memories for Jarno Trulli, this point right here is where Rubens Barrichello dived past him, remember, on the last lap of last year's Grand Prix to deny Renault 2 cars on the podium. A very swirly exit from the final chicane puts him ahead of Raikkonen, but behind Alonso. So at the moment, they've got their front row start slot, but I fancy the 2 Ferraris are going to be trying to knock them off that.
You could well be right there, but I think that's good effort from Trulli, and I think it highlights the even better effort from Alonso. Alonso really, he has to make hay while the sun is shining. Raikkonen with a 10th place grid drop. Michael Schumacher's been on the ascendancy recently, and Alonso's certainly doing his best to counter all of that. Fastest at the moment, with only, I think, one serious player left who could knock him off that pole position, and that's Michael Schumacher.
Well, the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that we now have a Minardi out on track. We'll have another one in a minute. Why is this? Why are they going so late in the session? Well, it's because, if you remember, at Indianapolis, only 6 cars took part in the race. The 2 Minardis were 5th and 6th. And as everybody else withdrew from the race, we've had all the Michelin runners so far. Now we get onto the Bridgestone runners who did run in Indianapolis. And it's Frisacker followed by Albers, then Carter K and Montero. And finally, the 2 Ferraris, Barrichello and Michael Schumacher, will go out last. Minardi, impressively, a second a lap faster, Martin, than they were here last year, despite the fact we've had a rule change this year, taking 30% of the downforce away, 2 race engines and all the rest of it. So they've managed to find speed in comparison to last year. And at the moment, certainly throughout free practice, they've been quicker than the Jordans.
Yes, they certainly are getting this car working nicely. They were, what were they, about 5 seconds off pole position pace or front-running pace, and now it's down to 3.5. So, and the car looked good, didn't it? The car looked quite well balanced through that lap. So Frisacker into the 1:17, and Luis Guben has found the current pole sitter, Fernando Alonso.
Fernando, pole man last year. What do you reckon the chances are of starting this race from the front of the grid again?
I think last year was a fantastic race for us because the R24 was not performing very well, and here we had a very good race. So we are extremely confident with this year's car to have a good race again, and so far has been a good weekend.
Who do you think is going to be your toughest opposition? McLaren again?
Yeah, it seems that McLaren again are very, very quick, and I think for the race point of view, McLaren will be the big opponent.
Yep, no doubt about that. Zsolt Baumgartner, you see on the right of the screen there, driver for Minardi last year, come back with a rather lurid T-shirt to visit a few of his old mates. Jenson Button, we saw a moment ago, going 6th fastest, while Louise has very quickly managed to leave Alonso behind and go and talk to Jenson.
Yeah, Jenson, you didn't look as though you were totally able to find the sweet spot there, maybe not so much as you have been over the rest of the weekend. Was that right?
Cheers, Louise. I was happy with it. You know, I did as much as I could do with the car. So yeah, I didn't make a mistake.
We saw Takuma, when he finished his run, he put on a headset and a radio and was obviously passing some information back to the team. Is that then relayed on to you?
No. Sometimes it is, but it wasn't today for some reason.
So generally speaking, what kind of shape do you think you're in for the race?
Well, we have to see where we end up in qualifying, but I'm reasonably happy. You know, it's not a bad position to be in. We can still do a lot from there, and obviously Kimi's got to go back 10 places, so that does help us.
Cheers, Jens.
Yeah, it's a net 5th place at the moment for Jenson Button. Raikkonen currently 3rd. That will become 13th, but it may be worse than that by the time the 2 Ferraris have gone out on track. So once again, Alonso doing a super job in qualifying. There's been a little bit of criticism of him in terms of his performances in qualifying, but when you go away afterwards race and you work out how much fuel he was carrying in the qualifying sessions, you adjust the times for fuel. Time and again, Alonso comes out as having done the best job.
Yeah, but he delivers every weekend, doesn't he? All kinds of different racetracks, conditions, dramas, and I think, given everything that went on 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis and all the fuss that there's been since, if he can demonstrate he can keep his head at this moment. Remember back in Montreal where he started screaming over the radio about his teammate, and then eventually his teammate drops down, he goes and throws it into the wall with an unforced error, although he was pushing hard at the time. It just had you wondering where Alonso's head, because this is a head game now. Michael Schumacher knows how to win world championships, and he's suddenly cruising up behind them. And can the younger guys keep their head? And for me, Alonso's showing very clearly today that he can.
Yes, Raikkonen and not quite matching him for speed. We don't know how much fuel he's carrying, of course, at the moment, Kimi Raikkonen, but he will go 10 places back on the grid. But Raikkonen bouncing back from an engine change, which is the reason he'll drop 10 places back on the grid. So all these little challenges and pitfalls, these brass tacks put on the road in front of the drivers to try and trip them up and cause them problems. And as you say, Martin, with Michael Schumacher coming up strongly, Ferrari very much the form team at the moment. Last 3 Grand Prix, they've taken 42 points, which is an average of 14 points a race. So it wasn't just the big payday in Indianapolis. They've been on form ever since the Nürburgring, and everybody painfully aware of that at Renault and McLaren. Here we are then, riding on board with Christian Albers, talking of points, Minardi. Christian Albers then, Minardi taking 7 points in the US Grand Prix, their biggest payday since 1993, 12 years ago for the Minardi team, so a big result. And here is Christian Albers. Teammate Friesacker currently 15th on a 1:17.9. Into the, whoa, very nearly lost it then, and he very nearly lost it on the exit as well. Albers really trying hard, trying to carry more speed through that corner than the Minardi really wanted him to. And a spectacular sideways driving from the Dutchman. Is he going to be able to get himself in front of teammate Friesacker? Into the final couple of corners then, the Lycée, the school hair corner, and up over the curbs of the final chicane, and he goes just behind his teammate by 0.4 of a second. Some of that indeed would have been from the sideways moments.
Yeah, just way too near. He overdrove the car by some margin. It's a shame. It got him away from him in Imola chicane, and he tried to make up for it in the second part by jumping on the throttle pedal, and it just punished him again. Shame for him, but at least he gave us some entertainment and was pushing the car hard. Now, can Jordan respond to this vastly improved Minardi performance?
Well, certainly, I think Albers is a little bit vulnerable for Cartacane and Montero, but Friesacker's time is pretty tidy. It's almost exactly the time that Friesacker managed this morning. The best Jordan time this morning was a low 1:18. they haven't managed to break into the 1:17 in the free practice session this morning. Carter Cahan then outperformed in Indianapolis by teammate Montero. Once again, plenty of energy going on behind the wheel for Narain Carter Cahan. Always a lot of action and drama where he's driving. He's going to catch the recovering Minardi from the looks of things. Not quite sure where he's going to catch him. I just saw a flash of him in the corner of my eye. And, well, the B-Spec Jordan. Whoa, big slide there for Carter Cahan. The B-Spec Jordan that we're hoping to have ran here in Friday in the hands of Robert Dornbos, the third driver, but it's not quite reliable enough yet to make its appearance. And certainly here with the pressure that Minardi are putting onto them, I think that they really want to get that Jordan through as quickly as possible.
Yeah, with most of the teams have now, I mean, we were expecting a 25% penalty of aero this year. They've got that down to 5 or 6%, and that demonstrates, I think, why Jordan will be keen to get their new car out sooner rather than later. But right now, Carter Cahan has put his car, his Jordan, way ahead of the two Minardis.
Yeah, good effort there from Carter Cahan. We'll find out tomorrow what the relative fuel loads of the two were. He had a less lurid slide than Christian Albers. Nevertheless, plenty of effort there. Here's Thiago Monteiro then, on the podium 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis. First time ever that a Portuguese driver had stood on a Formula One podium. The circumstances were exceptional, but nevertheless, it was his and there for the taking. The Michelin teams didn't have a tyre to compete with Bridgestone on the day, so whatever happens, I think he'd have been on the podium. So you can't take it away from him. But I wonder what his bonus money was, because you imagine signing a contract to drive for Jordan in 2005, and you say, well, what happens if I get on the podium then? And they say, oh, well, we'll give you $3 million if you get on the podium, because the chances of that happening are zero. And then, of course, you have a situation like Indianapolis and a big payday. I did ask him that question on the way home, and he said, it's a lot of money.
It might be for the team, but I'd be surprised if he's getting any money at all, frankly. I think he's probably taking money to the team in terms of sponsorship, and he'll have to take his slice out of that. He might be on some kind of points bonus, but I would be surprised. Whereas he, compared to his teammate, well, he's a fraction faster in the middle sector, about the same in the first. So, surprisingly, both Jordans could well end up ahead of both the Minardis.
Yep, it would be against the form of free practice, but perhaps they weren't showing their true colours in free practice. Minardi fancied they were going to get the Jordans today, and it looks like they're not. Well, they've got one of them. Carter Cahan, Friesacker, Montero, Albers is the back of the grid special. Jordan, Minardi, Jordan, Minardi. And we've got just the two Ferraris to come. And Ted Kravitz has some news for us.
Yeah, and I'm afraid to say the brain drain has been continuing at Jordan. Remember, Trevor Carlin, their sporting director, walked out, but now their head of engineering, Paul Monahan, has walked out and left the team. He's joined Red Bull. He's a very clever bloke. Used to engineer Alonso at Renault, did Monahan, and now he's gone. So it's a big loss to Jordan.
Yeah, he used to engineer Jenson Button as well when he was at the Benetton and then the Renault team. So he's joining Mark Smith, who he worked with very closely at Renault, who was briefly in the Jordan team and is now transferred to Red Bull. So he's joining one of his old muckers. People do tend to like working with the same people and tend to follow them around from team to team. Paul Monahan has joined Mark Smith at Red Bull. Here's Rubens Barrichello then. Quote this weekend saying he was committed to Ferrari to the end of 2006 after recent rumours that he might be looking around for something else, but still people suggesting that there's a possibility Rubens might go somewhere else for next season. It's still very much up in the air. As I said before, Ferrari the form team at the moment, and the way that you get this field spread, Barrichello 100th up on Alonso, the way the field spreads out in the early part of the Grand Prix, 2005 style, I think Ferrari really want to take control of this Grand Prix, try and get themselves up at the front of the grid, and that looks to be the strategy here for Barrichello and probably Michael Schumacher as well, get themselves up at the front.
Yeah, looking handy for Rubens, still a fraction up. It's all down to these last few corners. Car looking nicely bolted down to the racetrack. High line, very high line for turn in to Chateau d'Eau, so you can get the car straightened up a bit, give a bit on the way in, gain on the way out, and all the way down what is effectively a straight for a Formula One car, despite that rather large left kink. Now launch it across the curbs, don't hit the throttle too early, otherwise you're straight into the traction control. And he's had a horrible final sector. Barrichello goes P5, a net P4 after Raikkonen takes his penalty, and he'll be studying that closely later on to see where that all disappeared to. Horrible towards the end, no mistakes. He was very high in that Chateau d'Eau corner though.
Yeah, he was. It's half a second that he's lost in the final sector. Flavio is looking through his fingers more or less at this. He really desperately wants a Renault pole and a Renault victory here on French soil, especially with no French driver in the field. First time in 40 years there's not been a French driver taking part in the French Grand Prix, but a French company is leading both World Championships and looking pretty strong at the moment.
Nobody likes to see that with the French drivers, but they had this campaign with Elf. They brought a bunch of drivers through, didn't they? You have Bernard, Comas, Panis, Prost, I think, was at the beginning of all of that, and that stopped, and so have the French drivers. Michael Schumacher then, the last man on the track as the winner of the previous Grand Prix. Where can he put the Ferrari? Barrichello's P5 at the moment in the sister car. We're expecting a hot lap here. Can he beat Alonso and take the initiative and put the pressure on everybody else?
Well, certainly he's worked out recently that you want to be up the front of the grid. You take a bit of fuel out if you're not quite competitive enough to do it on merit, and you get yourself up there because you don't want to be part of the field spreading out in the early part of the Grand Prix. He's up at the moment after the first sector. He's lost count of how many times he's won this Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher. It's brought him some really sweet memories as well. He even clinched a World Championship here. That's how dominant he was a few years ago. This early in the season to clinch a World Championship. It's much more of a struggle for him this year, and he's lost ground in the middle sector.
All the Bridgestone runners are struggling towards the end of the lap, and remember the Minardis and Jordans, it showed up as big, leery armfuls of opposite lock and scary moments. But I think also we saw Barrichello fading as the lap unfolded, and are we seeing the same thing from Michael Schumacher? Can he do some damage limitation, get himself in the top two rows? Car a bit out of shape in the final corner. He goes P4, that's a net third. He's a fraction behind Raikkonen. Raikkonen will drop 10 places, so he heads up the second row, and Alonso again then with a brilliant performance for his second consecutive pole here in Magny-Cours. Louise has found Jarno Trulli.
Well, Jarno, I know that the team were expecting big things this weekend, and based on that performance, it looks like you could well be in a position to deliver them.
Yeah, I must say that, I must admit, yesterday I wasn't very happy, but we have changed things a little bit around today with the car setup, and we're looking much stronger than we were yesterday, and car handling is very good, and we are very close to the top team, and again, another very strong, good lap in qualifying.
How close and how strong do you think you'll be?
I think we can be strong during the race. This morning, during the long run, we were quite good, quite competitive, even if tomorrow weather forecast is slightly different, more sunny, hotter, but should be better for us.
Another front row start then for Jarno Trulli. Another pole position for Fernando Alonso, the 6th of his career and the 3rd of the season, 2nd in a row here at Magny-Cours, France. Tomorrow, he'll chase his 5th Grand Prix victory. McLaren are very strong here as well, but today, Montoya in 9th and Raikkonen 13th. Net after you add the engine penalty drop of 10 places means it's a tall order tomorrow for McLaren and what should be a spellbinding French Grand Prix.
Fernando Alonso is our pole sitter at Magny-Cours for the French Grand Prix. So relaxed, the World Championship leader feeling no pressure at all. Just another very successful day at work. Alonso up front alongside his big pal Jarno Trulli, who says he feels really at home racing in France. Michael Schumacher muscling the Ferrari onto the second row. Fine qualifying performance from Japanese best ever driver Takuma Sato on the second row. Barrichello struggled in the later sections down to 5th. Fisichella on the 3rd row in the second Renault. Button 7th, Montoya 8th in the McLaren, Massa and Villeneuve rounding out the top 10 in those Saubers. Moving down the grid, Ralf Schumacher first out, and a little mistake in his lap. He will start 11th. Webber lacking a bit of bite in the Williams, 12th. Raikkonen demoted 10 places because of that engine change, and that will really hurt the Finn, starting 13th, unlucky. Heidfeld behind him in the Williams. Then David Coulthard and Christian Klien, the Red Bulls battling for speed and grip here. Karthikeyan ahead of Friesacher in the Minardi. Montero, who got on that podium, of course, in the farce at Indianapolis, and Albers on the back of the grid. OK, Tony, looking at that, let's first of all concentrate on the BAR, shall we? And particularly Takuma Sato, who really found the sweet spot in his lap. The BAR looked really good on that.
They've been doing a very lot of hard work in Jerez, and they've done hundreds and hundreds of laps in Jerez down in Spain, fine-tuning this car, especially updated aerodynamics. They've got updated engine developments from Honda here as well. I think they were pretty shocked at the Nürburgring when they came back to find that they weren't quite there in terms of aerodynamics, and aerodynamics and tyres are everything at the moment, and this is a high downforce circuit. It's very smooth. You're having to drop the cars down as well to get it to really work well.
They must be so upset they're the only team without a single World Championship point.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
0 points for BAR. Who'd have thought it? I mean, their luck hasn't been with them. Imola aside, they've had a very, very difficult time. Takuma Sato there, his best this year is 12th. Last year he had his best at Indianapolis. He was on the podium.
And I don't think he's ever finished the race here. Never had a great record at Manicourt. Anyway, we'll look at Jenson Button in a moment. Let's first of all concentrate on our pole sitter, Fernando Alonso, a single lap and into the garage at Indianapolis and really making up for lost time here.
We have to pinch ourselves and just remember French Grand Prix is the oldest one in the book, 1906 when it first started. This is Renault back as a manufacturer now. Very, very important for them to get pole position here. This is why you saw Flavio Briatore putting 2 fingers up and saying, we've got it, we've got pole position. That's why you said, there you are, look at all the workers
6,000 of them.
From the factory, 600 odd of them, right in the main grandstand in front of it, and they've got pole position here. And I'm sure all the big wigs from Renault will be here. There's Briatore, very, very happy, very important. But can they convert it into a win tomorrow? That's the big question.
We shall see. Fernando Alonso, the fellow says he has been competing since he was a toddler. He just loves competing. He is up there in the press conference. Let's see what he's got to say.
Fernando, what a great place for you to be on the pole yet again.
Yeah, last year I had the pole here, the only one of the 2004 season, and I came here with good optimism and very confident about this year's car and this characteristics of the Manicourt circuit. So, you know, whole weekend has been good for us, and the quali lap as well, with no mistakes, with a very, very good balance in the car. So everything went well today.
A very nice looking lap, but a lot of pressure, of course. Half a second covering the top 7 drivers.
Yeah, we knew that. Always here in Manicourt is very, very tight, the times, and we knew that every 10th of the second is important for the quali lap here in Manicourt. So I pushed from the beginning. I felt the car straight away. Good balance in 10.3, in 10.5. So give me even extra confidence for the rest of the lap, especially the last sector. So I was extremely happy with the lap.
And perhaps even more support than last year following your success so far this season. Lots of blue out there in the stands.
Yeah, a lot is after, I think, with Barcelona Grand Prix, the only 2 tracks we see more blue than red. And obviously for them, I think it's also a good day. And for tomorrow, the grid position we are, because also Giancarlo is in the top guys, I think we can have a very, very strong race in our team.
We look forward to that. Thank you very much. Jarno, congratulations. Your 5th appearance here as a top 3 driver in qualifying in 2005. It's getting to be a real pattern for you.
Yeah, I couldn't believe when we started the season that we were performing so high, and you know, I keep doing a very good job together with the team and all the engineers and mechanics. So we are extremely happy about our season. We have had some bad luck in the last few races, as we could get some more podium, but nevertheless we're still here fighting. Another good lap today in qualifying and another first row.
And your thoughts on the competitive nature of qualifying and the strategies we're going to see in the race tomorrow? Usually a lot of pit stops here.
Yeah, you're right. And normally we do 2-3 pit stops, and we will get a better idea on what fuel everybody has run today. We'll definitely see different strategy, and the race normally here is like a game, and you play it on the strategy at the pit stop.
We look forward to seeing that game tomorrow. Kimi, turning to you, obviously a bittersweet moment for you, 3rd quickest, but unfortunately that engine problem yesterday, changing engines and having to start effectively 13th on the grid tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so. It was not the best way to start the weekend yesterday, to blow up the engine, but what can you do, is going to cost us a lot this weekend, but at least the car was very good, and I think so we will have a good, strong race, but unfortunately not where we should start, so we just need to wait and see where the others are stopping, and then we can really tell.
He has the machinery to make an impact, even from 13th on the grid. What about Jenson Button? Just about making the top 10. He put on a brave face when Louise spoke to him, but deep down I think he won't be that pleased with that one.
No, I don't think he will be happy with that unless obviously he's got that bit more fuel on. You know, after that pole position in Canada and then an uncharacteristic mistake when he hit Champions Wall in Canada, which surprised me, I have to say. I think he's got quite a lot on his mind at the moment, because as we get into the second half of the season, they've got to start thinking seriously about the Williams situation, the contract situation, be pressure on him from Honda and from BAR to stay with this team here. He's the jewel in the crown for them. They want to keep him.
But a sellout British Grand Prix looming next weekend. He will want to go there on a high, surely.
Yeah, and he'll savour it, he'll enjoy it, and it'll be worth, you know, 0.4 seconds a lap for him with the people power there at Silverstone, and they'll urge him on, and he'll want to do really, really well.
Trulli has been brilliant in qualifying this season. Before we see him, Martin said something in commentary about phantom pole positions. I know he's on the front row, not on pole, but people running very, very light and perhaps being on the grid where they don't deserve to be.
Yeah, I mean, you can run that sort of light fuel and then you've got to come in early. You pay the penalty in the race. Now, in that particular race at Indianapolis, Trulli was on the pole position, but it was rumoured that he only had enough fuel in there for 3 laps, and none was up front. Yeah. But again, they knew that the tyres were only going to last for 10 laps, and if the race had gone ahead and he'd come down the pit lane, he would have been in fairly early, but so would the others.
But he really likes it round here. He says he feels very at home, and you have to, no matter how much fuel's on board or not, another very, very accomplished lap by Jarno.
Jarno Trulli is almost a French driver. He drove for Prost for many, many years. He drove for Renault. He speaks fluent French. He's lived in the area. He's tested here every inch of this circuit when he drove for Prost as well. And apart from being a great qualifier, he's a great racing driver, so expect a good performance from Jarno tomorrow.
I know you're expecting great things from the Ferraris, a 1-2, a ludicrous 1-2 at Indianapolis. They had a 1-2 here last year. Last to go in the session. Rubens Barrichello, he made a mistake late on, didn't he?
Yeah, that was a mistake late on, but again, it's a situation of Bridgestone trying to balance the performance of the tyres against the durability of the tyres, the safety. You see the way he bounced over the inside curbs there, having to take so much, and it affected that. Michael Schumacher, again, he bounces over the curbs on the inside, looking incredibly violent, but they have done so much work on this car. There's a new nose cone, new side pods, new rear diffuser, updated engine, but Briatore keeps the pole.
With a brilliant record here, though, Michael Schumacher. He's going for his 8th win. I don't think a single driver's ever won 8 Grand Prix in one place. You wouldn't put a line through Michael tomorrow, would you?
He's extremely well positioned. He's coming up the stand side. He's a real stealth fighter. You've got to watch out. He's only 25 points behind Alonso.
Let's have a word with Rubens Barrichello, shall we? He's with Lou.
Well, Rubens, what was your verdict on that one?
Well, it was a good lap. I complete sector 2 in a high. It was really, really nice. Then sector 3, turn 13, I pick up some understeer that wasn't there in the morning. So the front tires grained a little bit, and looking at it now, it seemed green. So I left a couple tenths at least on sector 3.
A couple of cars quicker than you. Do you think that's a true demonstration of the pace that we'll see in the race as well?
Well, in the race is a different thing. I mean, we see the Renaults going quite fast. I think Raikkonen has a penalty of starting at the back, but it's still going to be a contender at the end of the race. The others, I don't know, they may have a little quick lap and fade away a bit. That's what we hope.
He had a super race here, Rubens Barrichello, last year, one of the overtaking manoeuvres of the season when he took Jarno Trulli, who was sleeping on the last corner in the Renault, probably hastened the end of his Renault career with that one. Williams not going particularly well, all sorts of new pieces on the BMW Williams, but they are down in the lower half of the grid. Let's have a word with Sam Michael, shall we?
Well, Sam, both Williams outside the top 10. What's going on?
We struggled a little bit today to get the best out of the car. We've come here with a new package, which actually aerodynamically looks like it's working quite well. If you look at all the data system and everything is working as it should do. But we'll wait and see tomorrow where everyone is on strategy, and hopefully we can get some points tomorrow.
So points you're aiming for, is your race pace any better than your qualifying pace?
It's a bit difficult to tell because everything was, if the pace yesterday was fine, it was definitely better than where we were in qualifying. But this morning, because it was a damp session in the morning, we didn't really get a good picture. But tomorrow will give us a better picture where we are.
What's the mood in the camp like, given the BMW's news earlier in the week?
It's fine. Everyone here is just pushing for this year.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay.
Been an awkward weekend for Williams in the wake of the news that BMW are buying Sauber and are probably moving away. How disappointed would they be that all the new bits on that car do not appear to be working instantly, Tony?
Bitterly disappointed, Jim, because so far all the developments they've made have really worked and really paid off. I mean, they had those fabulous, second place at Monte Carlo, second and third, for example. But here in particular, they've got these new side pods, the bigger radiators, all affecting the aerodynamics, at which they've been very adept so far. It's clearly not working. This is a high downforce circuit. They should be much better off than that.
And all of a sudden, briefly, Tony, according to Ted down there, they're moaning about lack of power from BMW.
Well, can I just make one point that of all the engine manufacturers this year, they all made new engines. BMW, the only one that updated their old engine, and there have been a lot of quiet complaints, but now they're very, very vocal about lack of power. They're not the force they were.
OK, Tony, thank you. Ferrari reaction now from Ross Brawn.
So, Ross, are Ferrari back in the game here?
Well, I think it's been gradually getting better, and Indy didn't show it, but we had quite reasonable lap times in Indy, and during practice I think we were quite competitive. I think what's good here is we've got some first lap performance which we've been lacking. We've got a new tyre here which appears to be better in that respect. There's a new aero package on the car, a little bit on the engine, a little bit on other things, and I'd like to think we are in the hunt again. The long runs from yesterday didn't look quite so strong for us, but then we don't know what fuel people were running. But today the longer runs look better. So I'm reasonably optimistic.
How come Michael's speed faded from the first sector?
We're not sure. I mean, his middle sector wasn't very good at all. And it was slower than he did this morning, which, considering what we do with engine revs and tyres and normally him, we'd expect to have gained a bit of time. Last sector was okay, but he lost a bit in the middle, and he came on the radio and said that the middle sector wasn't very good, so we'll need to have a look and see if it was a balance issue or whether he didn't get the right line on a few corners.
Optimistic, and we are in the hunt, is Ferrari's message. Final thoughts, Tony, building towards the Grand Prix.
Well, I think in the absence of any French Grand Prix drivers, half of France are going to be supporting a Spaniard for a change, but he's really going to have to fight on behalf of Renault. Otherwise, France could wave the light blue flag tomorrow. OK,
but you're looking towards Alonso, are you, to sort of put a firmer grip on
Alonso
his...
there, but close behind him. Expect the Ferraris on the podium.
OK, Tony Jardine, thank you very much indeed. Now then, if you love your cars, stay right where you are here on ITV1, because coming up after the news, Tony and Louise, well, they request the pleasure of your company for the best of last weekend's Goodwood Festival of Speed. A wonderful array of past and present stars were there, including Fernando Alonso, our pole sitter, making a lot of new friends as well and enjoying himself hugely at this unique racing occasion. The Festival of Speed then will be with you shortly. That full Alonso feature is part of our pre-race show. Starts at midday tomorrow, and French Grand Prix highlights at 11:45 here on ITV1. Now, I must tell you, ITV Sport is also following cycling's Tour de France, and that starts today with the prologue at Fromentine, over a couple of 100 miles away from here on the Atlantic coast. Lance Armstrong, absolutely remarkable sportsman, going for a 7th win before he retires, and the Tour de France is off and pedalling at 3:15. That is this afternoon across on ITV2. We're going to get down to Grand Prix business here tomorrow afternoon, and when we do, Renault in their home race have their top man on pole. See you on race day from the whole team here. Cheerio.